There's a seat right there.
I can get it back.
All right, I'd like to call
I
this.
got to stay waiting for you.
Cassie's trying to tune in from the car ride home.
Got it. Hold it, please.
All right, I'd like to call this May 24th Ag Planning Tourism meeting to order. First order of business to accept the meeting minutes from April 19, 2022. So moved by Brian Campbell. Second. Second by Dave. Any further conversation about that? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. ASA, is Chris on? Right there.
Yep.
Hey, Chris.
Chris is here.
Go
Yes.
right ahead.
Hey, thank you everybody for allowing me to join you this afternoon. I just wanted to give a brief update on ASA's activities and especially the PDR program as we see it right now. We recently received word from Ag and Markets last week that 3 applications that we submitted in the county were awarded. These projects would be for the Slack Hollow Farm. This is Seth Jacobs' farm in the town of Argyle. A portion of the Kenyon Hill farm on LaGrish Road in town of Jackson, so that was awarded as well as Jim Lindsay's farm, 238 acres in Kingsbury. So we're getting the ball rolling on those awards. So it's always good to see more activity on that program. Also, we just recently opened up our pre-application process. Our pre-application program, for anybody who's not familiar, is an ASA in-house program where we have a packet of paperwork that we ask any interested landowners to fill out to be considered for the state PDR program. So we have opened that up. We have a deadline of October 31st to receive those. Those pre-applications and the instructions can be found on ASA's website. And over the summer, we will be scheduling more public workshops throughout the county at various days and times, just to explain the program and talk a little bit more about how that's administered, what the easements mean, the farmland conservation easements, and the overall process and program. So we do anticipate another round to open up from Ag and Markets next year is what we're thinking right now. So we're just trying to get our ducks in a row in advance of that. Also, a brief update on ASA's land conservation plan. We have consulted or hired a consultant, Karen Strong of Strong Outcomes, to help us draft our land conservation plan that will take us to the year 2030. So we're working through that as well. Right now, I just received maps from a GIS consultant that we're looking at various layers and data sets, including soils, proximity to other protected lands, and some different criteria. So once we have those maps in good order reviewed by our board, I will be taking those out to the farming organizations, Farm Bureau, Ag and Farmland Protection Board, and others to provide some feedback. So, hopefully you should be hearing from me within the next month or so about if everybody feels like we're on the right track with some of these GIS analyses and these maps. Our goal right now is to have the land conservation plan done over the summer. Obviously, farmland protection is a priority mission for the organization, but we are adding additional emphasis on working forest protection. That's something that ASA has done since our inception in 1990. It just hasn't gotten the press that the state grants for farmland protection has to date. But we're also looking to incorporate climate resiliency into our work a little bit more, as well as community conservation. So we're starting to touch on those areas Those particular 4 areas have been adopted by ASA's board in our strategic plan, our organizational strategic plan. So now we're just trying to incorporate that into our land conservation plan moving forward for the next 8 years. I think that's pretty much it for what I have for updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any additional materials, after the meeting.
Go ahead, Brian.
Chris, on the state forest, and since you guys are following that now, it's my understanding there's a program coming out where they're going to pay for a certain size forest acreage for stored carbon. So basically carbon credit type thing. Can you give us insight into what that curtails, how big of property and what the payments are going to be?
I don't have a whole lot of information right now on that particular program. There are some programs that are simmering, especially for climate. Carbon sequestration. Those get a little bit tricky from some of the workshops and things that I've participated in. Largely because bigger is always better, and it's a lot of these programs are still unfolding. A similar program we just submitted an application last week on the 16th through the Land Trust Alliance. It's funding that ultimately comes from DEC through the Land Trust Alliance for forest land protection. So this is a new program that the DEC just opened up. It's being administered by the Land Trust Alliance, which ASA is a member of. We did submit for one project for working forest protection. So, we're hoping to hear back on that fairly soon. But with some of these other programs, I know the Nature Conservancy had another grant program for carbon sequestration as well. But it was going to be a difficult fit, especially when you factor in a lot of those programs have to work with the landowners directly. So ASA would be taken out of any of those projects directly. So there are a lot of things still in motion, and a lot of these programs are new that we're still trying to wrap our heads around.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Chris? It's a quiet room today, Chris.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions or anything. Happy to answer.
Thank you. All right. Next topic is the upcoming consolidated funding application and other funding.
So year 12 CFAs. We've all been there, done that, but the CFAs are now open due July 29th. There are a couple of changes this year. As of up until now, when a CFA was submitted, they were submitted through the CFA portal, received and ranked by the regional council, and then once the 20% ranking that the regional council had out of 100, the applications were then forwarded on to the respective state agencies. So there are certain programs that the regional council is no longer scoring. So we're back to the old system of you have to figure out what state agency is offering what grants, but they still go through the CFA portal, and these application deadlines and contracts are still the same. So the agencies that are affected are Department of State. One of the programs is LGE. That does impact us because, so far as I understand, we are submitting an LGE or shared services application for the highway bars. In order to do that, I have to have the application in by July 29th, which means I'm going to have some, I understand that the engineering will not be completed, but I'm going to have enough of an assessment of the cost to submit the application. So again, it still goes in, but the impact to us is the scoring of the merits of the application will be entirely with Department of State and not regional council. Another program is there is a comprehensive plan program that is also offered by Department of State. Again, it's still submitted through CFA, but it's now ranked entirely by Department of State. DEC, the WQIP program, which we've done a lot of those, both through the Lake George Regional Planning Board and through Soil and Water. Again, they will go directly, the information is directly in the DEC website, and there's an engineering planning grant that's also available through DEC. NISCA, which is New York State Council on the Arts, that was actually removed last year. And the timing on that one is different. Those applications are open May 24th and due July 12th. Right, so they're a little bit different than the CFAs. So other than that, there are not any new programs that are contained within the CFAs, but there are some new programs that are funded that are not within CFAs. Any questions on the CFAs? All right.
Alan's one.
Al.
Other than the local government efficiency grant, what do you have on your radar for the county this time around?
There aren't any other applications that the county as a body is submitting that I'm aware of. There are a number of projects out in communities ranging from New York Main Street to some planning projects that I've been sort of making the rounds of a lot of towns, sort of encouraging some applications to get out there. But so far as I know, I have not been approached about any application directly for the county other than
Nothing
that.
from sewer district?
Sorry?
Nothing from sewer?
Not that well, they may be submitting it, but they haven't asked me to submit it, so they
Could
could
be
have,
through the regional planning board.
right, gone through them or through a consultant, one of the two, not sure.
Thanks.
So the other two programs that are coming out, the first one is, we've all heard about the DRIs, the $10 million downtown revitalization initiatives. So that program is in fact funded again at the same level that it was previously, which I think was 100 million. Does that sound right? Maybe you better not quote me on that. However, there is now an offset of the DRI. It's a program called New York Forward. Essentially, it is a mini DRI, and it is intended to reach the sort of the town level versus the larger city level. The DRIs were really only impactful, although technically a town or a village could apply, they just were not likely to be competitive. So these are essentially going to be smaller awards. And the award is basically going to be the Department of State is going to provide the planners and the consultants to go through a planning process for a community. Now, what I'm not clear on is what kind of implementation money is going to be behind that. So i.e., because it's the same amount of funding that's out there for the DRI, so I would guess there's going to be implementation money, but the planning process is supposed to create implementable projects. And then, again, my guesstimate is that there would be implementation money behind that. So each of our communities, especially those that have villages with denser population areas, should be thinking about submitting to that. It's supposed to come out this summer sometime. I haven't got an estimate from the Department of State when, but I'd be keeping an eye on that. The other one is one of my favorite programs. It hasn't been funded in 5 years. It's called Restore New York. Restore New York is intended to remove vacant, abandoned, or surplus buildings and help revitalize a downtown, a community, etc. The municipality is actually the applicant. So if you have a building that you we're having issues with owner of record, not sure who owns the building, it's a blight, it's a problem, you can do anything from pay to have the building demolished so that it's now safe and potentially redevelopable to actually redeveloping the site. I will tell you that I have strongly encouraged the Village of Greenwich to apply for this because of the building that burned, which is now a large hole in the ground. It would be an opportunity for them to maybe get something good out of that horrific fire. But that's the sort of thing that would be eligible. You can work with a partner, a developer, but the application is actually put in through the municipality.
Laura, how about like what county, I forgot the number for it, but when we take it off the tax roll because it's contaminated, 1138, can you apply for a grant like to clean up one of those so that we can put it back on the tax roll?
That's usually through the brown program.
Yeah, I know it, but I was wondering if this might be eligible for that.
Well, So first of all, the last rule, so it had, the funding is in the budget, but the new program rules haven't come out yet. So I can only tell you what the rules look like in 2017, but because it's got legislative backing, it still has to adhere to the original legislation. So at the 2017 level, the maximum we as a county could apply for, or actually any community could apply for, would be $1 million because it's based on population. So
Up to
Up
a
to $1
million
million.
on one project?
on
On the whole community,
the whole community, right?
even if it's one project or 10 projects, the whole community.
And it's a 10% match, which is a pretty minimal match.
So then that has potential when the rules come up, see if that would fall under the.
Again, it's something that I would be keeping an eye out, and I mean, I want to let everybody know about these things now so that when they're announced, you've got some planning in the process that says we'd like to investigate this further or see if this funding is a good fit for the project, et cetera. So I would, just be thinking about a roster of projects that you want to vet out as to whether this would be a good fit for them, and then
We know a few.
Can a town or a village purchase a property that's dilapidated and refix it and put it back? Will that be something that's available?
I have to go back and read the rule. As I recall, acquisition wasn't an eligible cost.
But if you actually paid the cost to acquire it, then can you use it to do that?
You could, but keep in mind, this is competitive, so you might buy the property and then not get awarded the
Right.
grant. So you have to strategize on that.
And how about like in the village of Cambridge, they say to redo the place twice? And there's probably still nothing there. Could this work to revamp that area? I can't think of the name of the building, you'll know. What's the name of that building? Talked about it the other day.
The one that was demolished?
Yeah, the one that was tied into
Yeah, the
everything
building.
else.
Yeah.
The Acme building.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Acme
Oh,
building.
I was thinking the same
Can we
thing.
restore that area or?
I was thinking the same thing when she mentioned Greenwich. It's a similar situation.
It's a similar situation.
Well, that one but that one's been going on forever. I mean,
I mean,
as long as I've been here.
No, the one that burned down, she's referring to.
That just happened.
Right.
No,
Right.
the one in Cambridge has been going on forever.
the town-
I would think that
outside.
would reach a higher level because it's been so long.
The last time we looked at this, do you remember the Flatiron Building in Whitehall?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Whitehall didn't, ESD was actually strongly encouraging us to get an application in to fix that. But as I recall, the building actually,
Was beyond fixing.
well, it fell down before.
They didn't wait for it.
Yeah, it didn't wait. It was actually a flat iron.
Yeah,
And when anything was under, it was flat.
And then there was some asbestos stuff.
yeah. But again, the general idea is you can pay for demolition, rehab, and or
Emergency.
reconstruction. It has to be an abandoned and or derelict building. It can't be in use for anything.
I think the hospital in there would call it too. That's a.
Oh, it would be ideal.
Or the Golden Fleece over in the Village of Greenwood.
We know the coppers don't.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
Laura, we don't trust myself to remember, keep the village mayor informed on your mind. We've got a building across from Slick Fit that's headed to tax foreclosure. The village had to put some money into to keep the public safe. So they're gonna be
That
coming
might
to
be
this
one that
board
would make sense.
about that building because they had to sink some money into it to just keep it as a public safety item.
Right.
So I think that this money might go a long way to something like that as well,
Well,
especially considering that corridor is,
you said it's on the tax sale.
it's headed there, yeah.
So in that situation, if they were gonna apply, do we pull that property for them if they apply? See, those are the questions that are gonna come
Well,
up.
there'll be an ask from the village as it approaches auction.
So you think they're already thinking that way? Okay,
I know that.
He knows.
so I just wanted, because we'd have to give it to them before they could like use that, otherwise you're taking a risk that, you don't own it in the end, so.
Again, the funding was in the state budget. I'm expecting the program to come out sometime this summer, but I don't know exactly what the time frame is. But again, it's better to be thinking about it ahead of time and instead of coming up with last minute ideas.
So is the dewatering facility considered an abandoned property that we can get? I'm Dave, I didn't know you were there.
Okay, any other questions on funding? That's pretty well what I have.
All right. Moving on to tourism updates.
Okay, so I'm sure most of you are aware by now, courtesy of the town of Salem and Sue Clary, she worked with Black Dog and a whole host of other people to put on an event in Salem, that was sort of dubbed the Small Business Toolbox, intended to introduce businesses of all types to the fact that there are resources out there to assist them. And I think a couple of supervisors attended. It was fairly well attended. I think it was well received. We haven't yet had discussions about duplicating that elsewhere, but I think it's on the table that we will likely want to try to do something similar in other parts of the county. Because I think overall, like I said, it went fairly well.
We had about 50 attendees that were not, either part of an organization or part of our public officials. So that's pretty good.
It was very well.
It was a really an excited crowd. There was a lot of energy in the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, we have about 70, 75 total with the public officials and the organizations that were there. But then there was quite a bit of small businesses from, as far north as I think, Granville and even Glens Falls, all the way down to southern portion of Washington County. Really good.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a great job organizing it. Food was good. You were planning.
I didn't know that food. I heard it before I got there.
The grilled fried chicken. Yeah.
Double eggs, all kinds of desserts. That's it all.
So as we mentioned, as part of the tourism budget, we're going to be working on trying to bring together and do other event type things. And I bring that up because at that event in Salem, there were actually a number of existing or potential Airbnb hosts. So one of the next ones that we're working on is we're going to try and put a group together to sort of form a best practices ideology in terms of, if you're operating a B&B or you're interested in getting into that environment, how can we help market, et cetera. But it will be a collaboration and exchange of information that would be similar to that small business toolbox, but focus more specifically on not just Airbnbs, but all the short-term rentals.
And even motels. I mean, there's ideologies to how you price set, and you'll get occupancy throughout the region. So I mean, if demand is up, you raise your price. You don't keep your price low when demand is high. So there's conversations to have like that with Airbnb operators who are short-term rentals, that operators that just don't have that business savvy to understand, how law of supply and demand works with that type of business. So
Yeah, some of it is just,
it's what it is. I mean, you don't sell July, 65% of Americans take their vacation in July. You don't leave your price at $200 a night when demand is at that high of a rate, at that high of a percentage in July. You raise your rate. The people are going to pay for it. They're expecting it. So don't think you're being a nice guy or gal by leaving your price low. You're just leaving money on the table.
so part
That's
of
a
that
Democrat. Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Businessman.
it's small business training.
My job was done when I came up with this tagline, small business toolbox. I was like, that's it. Done. Thanks, guys.
Well, so my question to that is because I get the good side of the Airbnb.
Yeah.
But as we talk about lack of housing, we lost 1 million people from COVID in this country. And they don't have enough houses. Well, a lot of it has to be what's been converted to Airbnbs that aren't houses anymore.
Well, I think you can, I think actually I looked just not too long ago. I think the actual number of Airbnbs that we're hosting in Washington County has gone down year over year. So there are some people that have transitioned into this market that have bought houses that were Airbnbs. People are just using them because there was an extra home they had, a secondary home.
Yeah.
But we actually have, I believe, from what I saw doing the analysis the other day, we actually have less Airbnbs that are.
That's because they pay tax now. Now they do it under the table.
But they don't pay tax. They collect it.
They collect, yeah, the
It's
Airbnb.
just full of pearls and stuff.
The only tax obligation they have right now is through Airbnb,
Right.
agreement through Airbnb. So, I mean, if they're selling on VRBO, then they're not paying us an OC tax. But in Washington County, Airbnb gets like 63%, more than that, 70% of the bookings.
Yeah, they're more like between 60 to 70% of the bookings, but the Verbo average revenue
It's
is higher.
Yes.
So the actual gross revenue is about the same
Same,
for both.
yeah.
Interesting.
Well, Verbo's more of your vacation rental, so that's what it's called, vacation rental by homeowners. Yeah. So I mean, it's all you're getting. That's in the northern part of the county on the lake side. That's where all the
Longer
Verbos are.
stays too.
Yeah.
And just incidentally, subsequent to the requirement that the state was considering through part of the state budget to require the short-term rentals to collect taxes that didn't get through the budget process, I did reach back out to Verbo and ask if they would reconsider their decision to work with us on a voluntary agreement. I never got a response.
That is your response.
That was your name. Yeah. So it's just interesting though, how one thing is good for us and ever it's another. That's all. And
I
the
think
problem is government steps in when that happens.
Well, I mean, the way I see it as an operator, Airbnb is trying to take care of their hosts because that's the way they're going to build their business. So they're working with the government and they're working with the hosts, the homeowners, because the more hosts they have, the more revenue they can bring in. Verbo they've been established since like 1981 or 1980. So they have an established, host, and they know what their niche is. So they focus to that. Airbnb is trying to take as many properties as possible so that they can have more opportunities to grow the revenue.
And I think that's one of the components of a best practices sort of policy is to understand that if you're operating a short-term rental in a neighborhood, that is a community and that is a neighborhood, and here's how you work with the neighbors to make sure that you're not becoming a nuisance or a hazard or something along that. I think that's a very clear message that needs to be part of that.
And there's ways to get into that with them. There's ways to restrict or take care of those nuisance problems. Airbnb, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Airbnb came out with an article last week that said for Memorial Day weekend and 4th of July weekend, they're not allowing anybody who has a negative review from partying to be able to book an Airbnb rental across the entire United States.
So it gets
No, so Airbnb's gotten better because you can only have one, your username or profile. You can't have multiple profiles anymore. You used to be able to have multiple profiles. If somebody gave you a bad review, okay, screw it. I'll just pick another profile and then go on and be able to book again. But now Airbnb has restricted down to every person is like, you have your own unique ID. You can't have another ID. So they've gotten better helping to control that. Again, they want to take care of their hosts because if they don't, then they don't have a business model or a growing business model.
So again, under discussion, what is actually scheduled, as you know, so these events are sort of focused on general industry, businesses, community, but we also have a business users group, which is a loose alliance of businesses across the county that are somewhat related to tourism, and we try and provide information exchange and resource exchange, and we call these the meeting of the mind. The next one is going to be held at Slickfin on June 7th at 5 p.m. The last one that we did was up at Hicks Orchard last fall, so this one will be in a couple of weeks.
Or is that limited to just businesses? The meeting of the minds?
No, the supervisors have gone, some other organizations.
Because I was actually gonna do a ticket through the Facebook pop-up last night, but it said you had to be a business. They wanted your business name and everything, so I just wanted to check.
You are a business,
You're
you're
a business in
Washington County.
You're the treasurer for Washington County.
Okay, because that would be an interesting meeting, I think.
It's a great meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of good information comes out of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to.
Don't introduce yourself because then you might have a bunch of businesses contacting you.
They don't want you to buy drinks.
Neither would be there.
He hopes. What can
Okay, just a comment to make, also in terms of dates, 6:30 PM, May 26th, at the Fort Edward Canal Street Marketplace. Chairman Hall is making the announcements for the Historic Preservation Awards for the county. So if you weren't aware of it, Salem Cemetery, Sandy Hills Arts Center, the Footbridge in Cambridge, and the Canal Street Marketplace will all be award recipients this year. And Sam, I didn't mean to steal your thunder or anything there, but just so everybody knows, that's when the announcements will be made. Okay, so on the haunted history, as you know, I passed out to all of the supervisors one of these to take a look at. I have more downstairs for anybody who would like some into their community. This is an initiative.
You want to get it back?
This is an initiative that I asked the team to look into last fall because it has been very well regarded by the Capital Saratoga region. Most of the other counties have been members. So since we had the budget to do it last year, I asked the team to look into it and sort of make a determination as to what eligibility we would have and what it would do for us. The way that it works is that you pay a fee to have one or two properties listed on their trail, and then it's a higher fee if it's more than two properties. But the specific rule is the property has to have regularly scheduled tours, not just one-off events. There were three entities that I really wanted to get listed. I wanted to get Skeen Manor, Salem Courthouse, and Fort Edward listed, but we could not list Skeen or the courthouse because they don't have regularly scheduled tours. However, we also have unlimited ability to list events. So if you go on to the website that's listed on this, if anybody has in their community a haunted house and they're going to be, or building or park or whatever it might be, and there is some sort of haunted history related event, I mean, we're not talking sort of haunted corn maze kind of thing, but if there's some event, then we can list it on the events page of the Haunted History Trail. And if this goes well, because we actually tried to convince both Skeen and the courthouse that they might want to think about doing regularly scheduled tours to get this promotion, but I think both of them needed more time to figure out how they might do that. So what I'm thinking is that, we take this year, depending on how it goes at Fort Edward, next year we could opt into listing more venues if that is appropriate.
Now, regularly scheduled tours, is it regularly scheduled throughout the entire year, or is it seasonal? Like if they have a history of seasonal tours, or is it,
Does that be your?
does that be?
It doesn't necessarily have to be year round, but it has to be recurring.
Okay.
Right? So for example, there's a group that does the tours in Fort Edward. It's the same group that are looking at buying the old prison in Saratoga.
Awesome.
So they also conduct some of the tours that are done at the courthouse and I think at Skeen, but they're intermittent. They're not regularly scheduled.
So
yeah.
it's just weekends even would work.
Good.
Yeah.
It was, one, every week, every Saturday, 7 o'clock.
What do you do with the hospital until you get it onto
I
the?
know.
You start generating revenue that way. That's what you do.
Tentative budget presentation's already in.
They're gonna be high.
So as you know from my request to the Finance Committee, it has been astounding. This came out in March, and since March, I said at Finance, we had over 700 requests for visitors guides. In the last 3 days, we've had another 200 requests.
Nice.
It's like,
So my question on that is, how are you getting the requests? Are they pushing something that I Love New York and it requests from everybody that's in it, or they're actually going right to Washington County, requesting Washington?
no,
County?
it's on the website here.
www.countyfund, that, right on that.
There's a link,
Back page,
when you go on their website,
no, their website, not the website that's listed in the back.
The website that's listed in the back is our tourism
Is that
website.
where they're coming from?
No, they're going
Oh,
through
wow.
Haunted History Trail.
This
There's
one
a
right there,
place
yeah.
where
Wow.
you can,
Right, but are they just, when they
Cool, right?
press that, are they getting every place that's in here? Or are they getting just the counties they want?
When they go
Are
on.
they initially asking for us, or are they asking for
I have
everybody
not
that's in?
actually tried to request a guide, so I don't exactly know.
That's
how.
what I wanna know,
My
because-
guess is it's by region.
Yeah, so if they're requesting everybody in the region, it's not like it's just Washington County. That's what I come away thinking
I'm sure
of
that's
after the meeting.
Our region.
Well, it would,
Or Benry.
I'm going through the website, you can sort and filter by region. So I'm sure you was that. What I'm not sure of is if you can drill down to like specific places or areas within the region. But those requests are coming directly through the Haunted History website.
And why is it not electronic that they get it in paper copy that they want? Well, that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. They're doing everything a lot electronic to get there, but then the last piece is gonna be on paper.
So that's an interesting debate because we've had this conversation that says we've printed these visitor guides, which are, they're folded so that they go into a regular size envelope. The idea of A, not having a lot of printed paper, and B, we didn't want to put venues on the visitor's guide that might be outdated immediately after we printed it. So the visitor's guide is set up to be categories and information, and there's a QR code that you look at that links you right back to the website. So it is a bit of a catch-22 because you're using electronic to get paper that
This
goes
is-
back.
I'll bring the correlation, okay? I'll bring the correlation. Retail, let's talk about retail, okay? Brick and mortar versus click and order, okay? You have digital brands that are now purchasing brick and mortar because they need to have a brick and mortar presence in order to continue to
Right.
have relevance. It's the same situation as this. So person goes on here, has the information, well, they might have 3 or 4 friends that aren't gonna go on here, but now they have the material, they can show them, It's,
But if instead of it came up to ask me for information, so I'll send it to them. But if the QR code came up, they could bring that up and they could send it to them on their phone.
and the digital person probably does, like me, I would have it on my phone, but I often have this because my wife's not gonna carry it on her phone, and I wanna show her and be able to, when we go on tour up to Washington County, or Saratoga County.
No.
The point of the printed guides is marketing. I mean, when it's essentially branding and marketing, you have,
It just seems like it's backwards.
Well, the other way is communication, you gotta get it out there.
Yeah.
so, there are those people, and I still hear it around the county, that people say nobody does anything on those phones because we don't have broadband anyway, and why do you want all electronic stuff? Give me printed. And then you have other people that say nobody looks at printed anymore, we only want, so that's basically why we're trying to.
It is a catch-22 with restaurants right now, because restaurants aren't printing their menus, they're like, here's a QR
You
code.
don't have a phone,
And
you're
then-
out of luck. They better go by memory.
And then there's some people like, I don't wanna look at my phone, I want the menu in front of me, so it's.
So we try and accommodate both without killing the printing budget.
Just bring me a burger.
It's a
Although I did,
progressive commercial investment. We don't print off the internet.
Yeah.
so anyway, I wanted to let you know that so far that this has been very, very successful. And, the idea and the hope is to, I heard it said the other day that tourism is the gateway to economic development. That first you attract people to come visit your area and then they become interested in the area and they move here. Right?
So you go to the mall, right?
So I've been running the Boilermaker in Utica for it's been my 15th Boilermaker, and that has been Utica's biggest marketing ploy to allow people to get people to know about the Mohawk Valley to move into their region. They tout it every time they talk about it. It's their largest event. It brings in over 60,000, 75,000 people for a one-day event in small little Mohawk Valley. And that's exactly what they talk about. Get them here to run the race, show them how beautiful it is. You go through Utica any other day of the year and the grass could be up to your knees. You go there Boilermaker Sunday and the 3 days before Boilermaker Sunday, everybody's grass is pristine. The city's grass is pristine. It's all about, 2 inches high.
Freezing.
Yeah. I mean, trees are in bloom at the right time. It's all about showing them the beauty of the region and then getting them to move back there. So,
Perfect.
yep. And we got the most beautiful part of the state, so. No, we do.
You lost him in about 30 seconds there. Right?
But the chicken didn't eat that bad.
I just ate it. It's-
We're happy
We're not
to.
trying to get you to get to that.
We're updating it. Right, it says do not pave
I
road.
didn't print it out of
One
these,
is
so you
wrong
guys can
people.
share them.
Honestly,
There's two there, I think, Matt.
I think Dana might want one of those. All right, so if there's no more questions about tourism, we'll move on to the solar.
Great, I don't see any projects on it.
Thank you.
So, project.
Yeah. Well,
Any panels up in Easton yet?
Oh, we got one farm coming online.
Yeah,
Looks like crap.
In fact, I think it's online. And the other one, they can't get panels for.
is that
No,
what it is?
yeah, they're in cargo storage in California,
No, they left the
investigating whether
company,
they
so
were,
they ordered them from another company, and they give up on that.
they got them all in California and they can't get them out of the crates because they're investigating whether they were made by child labor. That was a story they got from her. I was like, wow.
You get a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I don't know why they tell me. I don't know why they tell me this stuff. I don't, but they do.
Point of order. All right, go ahead, Laura.
okay, so Debbie is bringing the map up online so that everybody can see it. But this solar map was, I sort of want to talk about what it is and what it is not. It is not a map of rooftop solar projects. It is larger scale solar projects that are in various stages of completion across the county. And it's essentially, through a lot of research on Pamela's part, an indication of what is built and completed, what projects are in development, what is proposed, and what has been sort of on the table but never actually got developed. In all, so the way that this map looks at it is by parcel acreage. It's not the actual acreage of the facilities. You could have 15 acres of solar panels on a 200-acre parcel. But to give you an idea of the scope and scale of what is being looked at, this map represents about 100 projects on 7,300 acres. So right now, over 7,000 acres across the county is in some stage of a potential for a solar project. So of those 100 projects, there are 19 that are actually completed on a total of about 210 acres. And of those completed projects, we have maybe a half a dozen that are 10 to 15 acres of actual panels. So i.e. the largest field of panels that we have in existence right now is, is probably going to be about 15 acres. It might be on larger parcels, but in actual completed development is about 15 acres of panels.
Is the dark yellow completed?
So the dark yellow represents basically any project in any stage. So the reason that we did it this way is because one of the things that this highlights is it is very clear that these solar projects are trailing the transmission line down Route 4.
Yeah.
So if you are looking at where the potential for the largest projects is, it is down that Route 4 line. Because they're trying to be near the transmission.
Right.
What's the difference between these 4 projects and this project? Why is this dark yellow and this one doesn't have dark yellow? What's the?
So I actually do have other maps that sort of color code it, but so let me tell you, I can't.
Yeah, because there's like 2 right there in the town of Granville that don't.
Yeah, this one's
have any
dark and this one's not dark.
Yeah, and the one above it.
Here's dark and there's nothing there.
Yeah, I think, I'm not.
Is it
really
because
sure.
they're so small that they're smaller than the spot that's
Right,
marked?
It might be, because I think the way that this was done is all the solar projects on this map were in yellow. So let me tell you what they are, right? So I said we had 19 completed on 210 acres. We have 70 projects that right now are in development on 2,500 acres. We have 22 projects that are proposed on 1,900 acres. And we have 18 projects that are undeveloped on close to 3,000 acres.
What's the threshold for a project? 5 megawatts?
So again, this is not rooftop solar. The ORIS, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, and we've talked about this many times before, in order for it to be considered a large-scale solar project at 20 megawatts, they may request the expedited planning process, which means they have to get permitted within a year. At 25 megawatts, they must use the expedited projects. So these projects represent facilities that are, probably above about 5 megawatts. Pamela may be able to answer that.
I said
And
that-
this came from the state.
This came from a
Yes,
lot of different, go ahead, Pamela.
5 megawatts and up.
It is
So
fine.
community solar projects.
Right. Okay, so this came from, we reached out directly to NYSERDA. NYSERDA was not particularly forthcoming because they're apparently interested in protecting the privacy of the landowners. It was research through the Office of Real Property and some of where the existing projects were before some of the permitting changes happened. And it was just general research that is by no means complete. This map is a work in progress. As new projects happen or get updated, this will be continually updated. The original reason that we developed the map is because as projects come through the planning agency, it's helpful to the planning agency who's part of that permitting process to understand the relationship of any new proposed projects.
Washington County Planning Agency,
Mhm.
but they won't all come through that.
They won't all, but some of them do.
Some do.
Right.
But
So-
I'm sorry, the
This-
dark yellow versus not dark yellow, don't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Matt, I think if you can drill down in on that, where the one you're talking about there, you'll probably see that it's yellow underneath. That's probably just the acreage. It's small.
It's just too small to control up that dark.
Right.
All right.
That's probably right underneath that, right there, Deb, right underneath that. I guarantee you it's yellow under there. It's dark yellow.
Okay.
Now, Laura, when you take, I'm gonna just talk Town of Easton. You take on the lower left-hand corner, you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 boxes,
Mhm.
whether they're yellow or not yellow. Those aren't 11 projects. That's
Those are
just
11 parcels.
11 parcels.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
right, I understand.
So
that.
many of these projects combine multiple parcels to call one project. So to give you the idea of what the largest in progress projects are, in the town of Easton, there is one project that is on about 330 acres of combined parcels. There's another project that's on about 250 acres of combined parcels. There's also some smaller projects.
What's the amount of actual solar coverage on
We
those?
don't know. That's part of the problem is Pamela's had a hard time getting information about the actual
Yeah.
acreage of panels. Well, it's easier to identify the parcels that they're proposed on. If you go to some of the solar developers' websites, Oralex being one of them, they will give you status and information on what projects they're working on and where they are. Not all of the solar companies do that.
Now, just to muddy the waters further, and Laura can explain this maybe better than me. Back in Easton, where there was 1 or 2 parcels, the planning board made them subdivide that and create 13 parcels. But it was only on 1 or 2 original parcels because of our subdivision regulations. So does it?
your town subdivision
Why?
regulations.
Yes, yes.
Why would you make them subdivide?
For- Because the solar farms also, if they're gonna pay the taxes, see, that's the thing about a solar farm. They come in and they're gonna pay the taxes on their solar farm, right? Well, if they put, and they're gonna use 8 or 10 acres of land for a solar farm, they don't want it on a 100-acre parcel because now they gotta pay taxes on 100 acres.
So they want to keep that, the other
So
part of the
they're-
parcel.
They want it on what they're using.
Right. Then without,
Why does the town want it on 100 acres? Because they pay. higher.
what you want, what do you want to scare to push away the,
You see,
With the revenue.
so you want the revenue?
You're a businessman too, you know what I'm talking about.
But I
Well,
want, but I
we
want,
got-
I want the revenue on the 10 acres because it's gonna be
Better than
higher.
nothing.
Right, you 100 acres at your ag tax, or you get 10 acres at the commercial tax and 90 at your ag tax, you're high.
and I think you'll find that on a lot of this throughout the whole county because they're like he said, they're business people.
The more you drill down in,
You're
so the less info we really know.
right, right. And some of these projects have gone away. Where you got, like in the middle of Easton, where you've got those 3 squares. That was Borrego, and they sent us a letter and said they're no longer interested in doing it.
Right, so I
So that was
mentioned
not even there.
there are 18 undeveloped projects that were up for consideration. The reason they were included on the map, again, was to give an idea of the impact of land that has been or is being considered for solar, i.e. for solar. It's like, it's land use, like what should we be thinking about?
And the other thing that everybody needs to know is there's on your transmission line you're talking about, there is a limit to how many solar farms can be on it because the power fluctuates from day to day. So in Easton, they have maxed out on the transmission line. No more can go on the transmission line.
get the other 3.
Well,
No, the other 3, there was a subline that came off from that went to Stillwater. And they were going to hook onto that. And then Niagara Mohawk said it needs to be upgraded and the cost of upgrading it forced them to abandon the project. So now you can fast forward this. And when you get into your smaller solar operations, like 5 acres, those are basically community solar farms. They can go on any 3-phase transmission line.
Right.
Anyone, anywhere. And we have one of those on Route 40, a 3-phase. But they're minimum and they have to sell their power to people. They gotta go out and
In the community and around.
yeah, well, or you can go outside your community, but you gotta have buyers for that power to come online.
It's a 10%, all 10% reduction that you'll see on your, supposedly is what they say.
Yeah, so they mark it
No,
up
I think
20.
you're actually paying a premium.
Yeah, as soon as
So
you mark it
got
up
green
20,
power.
they take 10% off.
Yeah, okay, so cost neutral, right?
So it's very deceiving about all this.
No. So in your comment about the transmissions lines having maximum capacity, that in fact is true and it's happening in several areas of the state. There is a reaction to that. There is consideration being given to upgrading some of these transmission lines because, as you know, New York State is trying to become all.
Plug my car on the road.
So I would not count on no more projects are going to happen because the transmission lines are at capacity. At some point, there's going to be consideration given to upgrading the capacity of those
It's
transmission
probably in
lines.
the infrastructure bill and we don't know it.
So to go on to where the largest projects are, by far, it's Fort Edward. There is a 370 acre solar, again, it's parcel acres, not panel acres. And then Boralex has a 1,500 acre project. So that's the single largest one, 1,500 acres in the grasslands. And then there's also a 325 acre.
Is that
one.
agreeable with the birds?
Now, Laura, do you know there was talk that if it, a lot of these solar farms like to say 20 megawatt or lower, and they deal with the town and there's less restriction involved. You just deal, if you go up to the over 25, the state now has the control and you have to go according to them, develop everything.
Sort of.
And on top of that, when that occurs, the town has no say in the matter.
Okay, so the way that it works is any project that is 20 megawatts or less goes through the state's Article 10 permitting process. The Article 10 permitting process does have significant allowance for local community participation And it can take multiple years to get a project permitted that way. To circumvent that, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting created a set of rules that said if it is a 20 megawatt project, a company can opt to go through ORIS and the expedited permitting process. If it's 25 megawatts or up, they must go through. ORIS is required to permit that project one way or another within 1 year.
Which means there's less multiple input.
There's, yeah,
You
so.
get multiple.
So the offset to that is that these large projects are, so supposedly there is a community participation process, but from everything that I've read, every community that has tried to object, even on grounds of prime soils or whatever their local laws are, has been overridden by ORIS. The compensation is ORIS has to will, and through the regulations, requires a host community benefit. There's also a fund. It's sort of one of those catch-22. There's a fund set aside, and I think it's like $1,000 per megawatt, which will give funding to the town to hire lawyers to fight the project that's going to lose anyway. But they'll give you the.
Well, you're not on anything.
So there is, ORIS is providing
You
some
feel like
funding to
Walter
help
business.
you as a municipality to navigate the process. And there is also host community benefit funding that's supposed to come through these large scale projects.
Does that help explain what happened in Argonne?
Nothing explains what happened.
Nothing.
No, but I mean, when you think about it, because they had a coast package, they had a pilot, they had all that, so is it set because that way it never gets defeated anywhere along the line? So that's come as a prerequisite. That's set in place. We crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's. You're gonna lose, so take it and be happy. That's kind of what it looks like to me.
Pretty much.
Money for nothing, as Dan says. They're ready to give it to you. Might as well take it.
Well, you know what's interesting too, is it started 3 years ago. They get a certain shot of money if they're approved. They award so many every year, NYSERDA does, but it's diminishing every year. So every year, there's a smaller award for their project. So in the very beginning, when they come to us, I don't know how big their award must have been, but they paid for all of our attorneys. They paid for wear and tear on our roads. They paid for any contract, all building permits in advance. And then the one project, they gave us a $500,000 host community package, and the other one, they gave us $600,000.
So the longer you wait, it's the law.
Yeah, it is. The longer you fight it, the less there's gonna be, to where you would end up with nothing other than the solar farm.
That happened with Galusha with the Hartford plant, the court. They got nothing.
Like we looked at it, the state's gonna fund it and back it. There's no need of fighting it, to get what you can get out of it.
So in any event, I want to thank Pamela and Heather. They both worked pretty hard on collecting as much information as they could scrunch up. And again, the concept behind this is just to give you an idea of scope of scale and of impact to the county. Just so that you understand, especially those towns along that transmission line, that as a community, you should be prepared to continue to see these applications. That's
A
really
lot of work went into that.
A lot of work went into that. Both Heather and Pamela have been working on this for about a year.
And on the other side, he took out another map, a whole bunch of applications for marijuana. That's,
Actually, I do have that list. So far, there's 15 licenses in the county so far.
One's to energize your body, one's to energize your car, hey. What's that accounting?
All right, that's
Take it
it.
to
I've got-
To a higher level.
No questions on the solar maps? A lot answered there.
Good job, Tim.
Any other business to come before the Ag Plan and Tourism? Seeing no other hands for business, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.